Amy Webb is a quantitative futurist and the founder of the Future Today Institute. She's one of 30 management thinkers on the Thinkers 50 radar, named as most likely to shape the future of how organizations are managed, and her annual Emerging Tech Trends report is always highly anticipated. Her session this morning was favorited here at the conference by close to, I think, 7,000 people, making it one of the most sought after sessions. Please welcome Amy Webb. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This is exciting to have you here. You are a futurist, which is a fun word to say.
Yeah, I have a weird job title, right?
Well, I want to get to that in a second, but what's really exciting is you just came off the stage, and you were presenting your 2019 Emerging Tech Trends report. And I heard the event was over capacity, thousands of people wanted to get in. Tell me how that went.
I think for me it went well. I don't know about, there was an overflow room that apparently also filled up. So I mean, there's South by is this amazing, magical few weeks that happens every year, and there are so many really interesting people here and interesting things to do and see. So the fact that anybody would wait on a line and give up part of their morning for me to be together in a room where we can talk about the future and technology is incredibly humbling.
Are you the Adele of futurism?
That would be amazing. Let's make that happen.
Okay.
Hashtag Amy is the Adele of futurism. That's probably too long for Twitter, right?
Yes. Well, we're going to workshop that one. But what's really cool, essentially what you were reporting on was you brought it.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't lift it.
Yeah, I know, right?
It is the 2019 Tech Trends report. And this is open source, and it's 99% of everyone's going to get it in a PDF online. It's not going to be in a book like this. But it's fascinating because it is a detailed analysis of 315 tech trends, a collection of weak signals for 2020, and more than 4 dozen scenarios describing plausible near futures.
That's right.
Okay. In average Jane and Joe speak, what does that mean?
So this is a big report. And basically what we do, so we track technology trends and shifts in society at my company, Future Today Institute. We do this all year long. Once a year, we try to look ahead, and I really want companies and people making decisions and everyday people with great ideas for startups, I want to position them so that they are less surprised by the future. And that they play a more vital role in shaping a good future for everybody. So for the past 12 years, we put together this report that's sort of like, here's all the stuff you need to be paying attention to. And the goal of that is to get people to think outside of their little silos. So most people, I think, are capable of tracking trends within their little industries.
Sure.
But these days, there's so much convergence across different industries and technologies that if you're not also looking at adjacent trends, you're going to miss big disruption on the horizon or big opportunities.
Sure, and I was making light a moment ago of like how heavy this might be. This is not dense. It is not like just one long read. It is actually, each topic is essentially one page, almost like a really simple PowerPoint slide, if you will. So it's real easy to kind of like take it in, internalize it, and you even provide this quadrant box here, which for me made it easier to understand, like how I should interpret this, or how should I put it on the back burner for myself, or put it, in the front of my mind. And I think you're able to sort of distill this for people, which I think is really cool. It's going to demystify a lot of it. So I encourage you guys to check it out and download it. It's not hard to read.
Yeah, and also just to, there's a lot of different trend reports out there. Our work and my job as a futurist is to look for data that exists right now, to find patterns in that data, to model those data and the patterns, to build out, to look for trends then and identify them, again, using quantitative measurements, and then figure out what all that means for the future. So what's in here is all derived from research and data.
So we should get into that because what are some of, I don't know if I can even ask you to choose one of your children you love the most, but what are some of the topics that you think should be paying attention to, and our viewers might?
So we're actually covering trends across 26 different subject areas. And I think one way to look at the future is to start from a place where you have very little knowledge. So there's a whole section this year that's all about agriculture. Now you may think to yourself, like, I'm not a farmer. Why do I need to know about precision agriculture? But you're a human, and you're a human who eats food, right?
Yes.
So
I eat a lot of food.
I eat a lot of food too. I'm into food. But we know that weather patterns are changing. We know that there were firenadoes last year in California.
Yes.
Which is like a Sharknado,
Yeah.
except with fire.
Yeah, without
like
Ian's
legit
earring as well.
scary.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
He's not in those. He
That's
wasn't
right.
in those,
I
unfortunately.
don't think so. We're kind of making light of something that's actually pretty serious. And so, I think we all have a moral responsibility to be thinking about our future food sources. So one area of the report that everybody can dive into is that. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff that have to do with new types of, like, combining artificial intelligence and farms, and CRISPR, which is editing the genome,
Yes.
for example. Which a lot of people think about just editing humans, but actually you can also edit seeds and livestock.
Right.
So there's a ton of stuff in there that I think we should all be paying attention to. But then there's also an entire section, a huge section just on autonomous driving. There's a big section on privacy, security, and data, and all the new ways that will probably be hacked this year. There's something in there for everybody.
It says there's 48 scenarios in this. 17 are optimistic, 20 are pragmatic, 11 are catastrophic. Can you give me one optimistic and one catastrophic to kind of balance each other out?
Sure. So I'll give you kind of an interesting curveball optimistic one. So you probably remember when we started to see things like mixed reality, like virtual reality headsets,
Sure.
finally come to market, and all kinds of other similar technologies. A lot of people said, this is terrible for our future because we're going to be socially isolated. Rather than going out and spending time with other humans, we're just going to sit in our homes wrapped in technology, right? And actually, the data show the opposite. So this technology has been adapted to help people gather together in cool new ways. So in New York City, for example, I don't know if they have this in California, but have you heard of silent discos?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, of course you have, but maybe not everybody. I know, like you heard about them before. You invented them, probably. No. You're cool. I'm not, and I'm old. But there's, but so for people who don't know, this is where you've got advanced audio, you've got really complicated Bluetooth headphone that are all color coordinated. And what's cool about that is, like, you and I probably I'm going to hedge that you and I listen to different types of music.
You never know.
I listen to a lot of REM.
I like REM.
Okay, that's good. But you probably don't want to go to a club and, like, emo dance to REM.
No,
Okay, so, but this, it actually brings us together. So you and I could go out and be together in the same place and find our tribes and have a great night.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is the optimistic scenario for things like virtual reality are actually the opposite of what everybody has said is coming, the social isolationism.
Sure.
We see the opposite happening. We see that this is bringing people together and mixing people together in new and interesting ways.
Yes.
So that's optimism. There's so many catastrophic scenarios to choose from. I think one that I find really interesting is we have a whole section on home automation. So this is, you could sort of think of your home being turned into a big computing environment where you talk to all the different machines and plugs and lights and your Roomba, and other things like that. One of the models that we've built show that increasingly there's so much consolidation that essentially, like, you're a Google family, you're an Apple family,
Yeah.
or you're an Amazon family living inside of a Google home,
Sure.
an Apple home, or an Amazon home. And at the moment, those systems are not interoperable, which means that it's, if you're somebody who has a hard time right now switching between iPhone and Android, like, think of your entire home, right?
Yeah.
So that becomes a real problem down the road. But if you think about all of the wearable devices that you have and the fitness and the health and everything else, and how those relate to the devices in your home, Amazon has a smart microwave that you can talk to. It's Alexa powered.
Oh, I saw, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, one of the catastrophic scenarios we built is that your smart home acts sort of more like a smart prison and starts making decisions that you wouldn't make yourself. So if you want to, have a bag of microwave popcorn or something like that, your microwave would lock you out. you've hit your caloric intake for the day.
I did not think of that.
Or we're here in
Wow.
Austin where there's been a drought. If it's particularly dry, and in the name of like helping the environment, your washing machine might decide that you can get another wear out of those jeans, and you don't get to wash them.
Okay, that's interesting, and that actually might be an interesting segue to your book. You've written a number of books, but your most recent one, which is out now.
It's out Tuesday, a couple days ago.
A couple of days ago, and you're on a book tour. So go to her website, and you can see where she's going to talk about her book. It's called The Big Nine: How the Tech Titans and Their Thinking Machines Could Warp Humanity. Whoa! It cautions that the future of AI is in the hands of just a few large and powerful corporations in the U.S. and in China. Is that what you just mentioned,
Yeah.
part of that?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, artificial intelligence. There's no like switch somewhere in the future where the singularity happens. But we're surrounded by AI all the time. People just don't realize it because it doesn't feel futuristic. The autocomplete messages when you're texting or emailing,
Sure.
that's AI. So the challenge is that there's been a lot of consolidation. So there's only 9 companies that are effectively building the future of AI because they have the lion's share of patents. They're able to attract the best talent. They have the most funding. They're building the custom frameworks and chipsets and tool sets and the whole thing. 6 of those companies are in the United States. 3 of them are in China. The Chinese companies are called the BAT, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. And in the United States, our 6 companies I like to call the G Mafia.
Oh, yeah.
So that's Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, and IBM. And I don't believe these companies are evil. I believe that we've gotten ourselves into this situation where it's hard because of, in China, demands from the president and from the very top levels of government, or here in the United States because of market pressures. It's hard for these companies to make good decisions that are in the best interests of humanity. So I don't believe that they're evil, but I do believe we need to come up with a different developmental track for the future of AI.
Does that include 5G?
5G.
You almost gave me the "don't get me started" look.
Well, here's the thing with 5G. 5G is not a singular technology. It's the 5th generation of wireless, and it means, it's an umbrella term with a lot of different components underneath it. It does include 5G, in part because, again, the components and the small cells and all of the different pieces right now are being developed at a much faster clip in China. And China is starting to export that very technology to 5 dozen countries
Sure.
that it has partnered with under a big policy called the Belt and Road Initiative. So it's already deploying that, whereas here in the United States, wireless carriers all have their own agendas. Our government can't figure out whether to nationalize or not, or what to do. So the 5G here is going to take longer.
What some of the potential problems I've sort of understand is as China is deploying this, for other countries to use, is essentially going to be Chinese made. It's we're not necessarily going to be as an American, like for example, putting in Poland, having an American base, U.S. military base there. Do we want to use? Does the U.S. want to use the Chinese installed 5G internet there?
Well, that would never happen.
Right. So then the problem. So that's not even what I'm more interested in. I'm more interested in the fact that now that becomes an internet that's separate from our internet, and then no longer do we have the World Wide Web and the open internet. It is now potentially could become a series of 5G internets all over the world.
Well, we don't need 5G for that. So one of our trends in this year's report, but it's been persistent for a couple of years, we call splinter nets. So the internet is already fairly fragmented, and depending on where in the world, and this is not because of 5G, this is because of local regulations, and depending on where in the world you are, the internet's going to display different information, and it functions very differently. Now, we think of countries like Russia and China and just assume that their internet is different, which it is. But because of big sweeping regulatory changes like the GDPR in Europe, depending on where you are now, the internet looks and functions differently. This just happens to be the 30th anniversary of Sir Tim Berners-Lee proposing, while he was at CERN, this concept that became the World Wide Web. And he has said many times, 3 decades later, maybe we should have thought through this a little differently as it rolled out. And I think a lot of us now have some regrets about how the internet has been repurposed for evil goods. And it's a good lesson and thing for us to keep in mind that technology, even when you have the best, most altruistic intentions for it, somebody always takes it and does something bad with it.
Yeah, and I don't want to end this part of the conversation on a sour note. Is there anything in particular, like an average person out there can keep in mind, or anything they can do to kind of combat this, or to speak to someone about?
I think we all need to develop a better set of digital street smarts, and part of that, the easiest thing to do is just to investigate who owns your data, where's your data going, be a better consumer of news. Be more skeptical, something we can all do. I mean, maybe that's the easiest explanation. Like there's a lot of pressures on our time and attention, and it's a luxury now to take a couple of extra seconds to say, well, wait a minute, what does this actually mean? So maybe being more skeptical.
So I want to go back to what we talked about at the beginning of this, which is you being a futurist. I'd like to be, you've written a number of books, and you have a memoir called Data.
Data Love Story.
Data Love Story, and there's a dating element to it, and I feel like you've in that, for me, it was like, great, you've already engaged me, because you're no longer in this ivory tower of someone who knows more than I do. What is futurology and a futurist, and what makes a good futurist?
Yeah, so I've got this crazy made-up sounding job title. So futurism is an academic discipline that goes back 100 years, and the job of a futurist is not to make predictions, it's to make connections. And there are lots of different ways of doing this, but most practicing professional futurists who have had training, we use different methodologies and models. My feeling is that the tools that I use are tools that anybody can use. And the work that I do is work that a lot of decision makers should also be doing as part of their daily activities. So as a result of that, a couple years ago, I made a decision to open source everything. So 15 years worth of research, our models, the methodology that is, it's described in detail in the book, The Signals Are Talking. However, you can go online and find it anywhere. It is rigorous work, it is difficult work, but it's not like work that, it's not like trying to learn some kind of esoteric area of math. Like, it's something that anybody can do if you just put in the time. And my feeling is we're facing a lot of critical decisions on the road to the future of humanity. And I'm concerned that we're not making smart decisions, or worse, that a lot of people think there's no point in trying to do any long-term planning because there's so much disruption and change. So I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for everybody to start using the tools of futurists, so that we can all do this together and make better decisions.
That's one of the aspects of the quadrant on each page in your tech report is to, like, depending upon who you are, do you want to put this, is this supposed to be front and center in your day, or should it be something you should just kind of closely watch?
Right. So we have this little action matrix that's in the report, but quite
action
frankly,
matrix. That's a better phrase.
But it does have 4 quadrants, and basically, if we have a lot of data and a high degree of certainty, or a low degree of certainty, but still a lot of data, and then how big of an impact it could be. We're either recommending that you take action now of some kind, that you let this thing inform your strategy, that you keep vigilant watch, or that you revisit it later. The problem is that when we're confronted with deep uncertainty, a lot of companies and everyday people, they procrastinate on making decisions. That is a terrible, terrible thing to do. So my biggest piece of advice to everybody always is, you have to think exponentially. So get used to making connections between trends and outliers and things that don't seem like they're under your direct area of interest. Think exponentially, but act incrementally. So there's always some way you can take some small action. So we mentioned CRISPR a while back, you and I.
Sure.
That might be a new term to somebody. So take 10 minutes, Google it, CRISPR. Make sure that the sources of information are good ones, and spend 5 to 10 minutes reading. You've taken an action, and that is an action that will help you understand the future better. It can be something tiny like that.
Okay, we only have just a few more seconds left. When your memoir Data is turned into a movie, we've already established you as the Adele of futurism. Who would be the actor to play you?
So there is a movie in production. and I cannot tell you who the person is who's been cast as,
love
or
this.
who is being cast
I
as
accidentally
me.
walked into that. That's so cool.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing team that's working on it. So
Okay.
I don't have any more information about when or,
So Amy Webb, your book, The Big Nine, is out. You're on a book tour right now. Your website is amywebb.io.
Yep, the book tour schedule is there. And if you are somebody who wants to download all of this research, go to the futuretodayinstitute.com. And everything is there. The report's there, tons of tools. All of that research, like I said, is free and open source, which means you can take it, remix it, use it. Just give us credit at some point.
Sure. Well, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah, it's a good time. And thank you so much for watching, and continue to watch. We'll be back in a little while with more. And stay tuned to southbysouthwest.com/live. Super fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was good. Good job.
Really fun to talk to you. I can imagine you're probably a big hit at cocktail parties when someone goes, "This is my futurist friend."
I'm not. They come for me. They stay for him. It's my husband. He's far more interesting than I am.
That's funny.
Yeah.
How do you introduce your wife as the futurist?
Oh, I just said the futurist.
That's